Let's take a closer look at a ratio word problem and think about how we can solve it using a tape diagram. So, the problem that we're looking at is the ratio of tomatoes to apples in a paper bag is 2 to 5. If there are 20 tomatoes, how many apples are there? Now, that's just one of the questions we could ask given the information that they're giving us in the problem. But let's answer this first and then we can discuss what other problems we can solve. When we have a ratio problem, we're going to think about four things. We're going to think about what we're comparing, and that's the first thing that we're going to look for in the problem. Not what the ratio is, but what things are we comparing, because that's going to give us our labels. And if you'll remember, labels are very important when it comes to ratios. So this is the way that I do my tape diagram problems. The ratio of tomatoes to apples, so the order is tomatoes first and then apples. So what am I comparing? Tomatoes to apples. And so I write T:(A) to say that I'm comparing tomatoes to apples. Okay, question 1 answered. What is the ratio? Okay, let's go back to the problem. The ratio is 2 to 5. Now, the 2 is first. It refers to the first thing that we're comparing, which is tomatoes. So I'm going to put the 2 under the T, and 5 apples. So the ratio of tomatoes to apples is 2 to 5. Question number 2 answered. What other information are they giving us? Well, if you continue to read in the problem, it says that there are 20 tomatoes. So I'm going to write over here 20 tomatoes. And then I have all the information. I don't have to keep on going back to the problem. So that takes care of what other information. Now, what is it that we want to know? Well, we want to know how many apples are there. Okay, now I'm ready to make my tape diagram. I'm going to use my labels, T for tomatoes and A for apples. It says that there are 2 tomatoes, so I am going to make 2 boxes for the tomatoes. And for apples, I have 5 apples. And so I'm going to make 5 boxes for the apples. And so that is the tape diagram for a ratio of 2 to 5. Now, the other information. Well, the other information tells us there are 20 tomatoes. Here's where my labels are so important. I need to put that the total number of tomatoes is 20. So I look for my label, T for tomatoes, and that total has to be 20. Now, since I know that in a tape diagram all the boxes have to be the same, in order to find out what goes in each box, I have a 20, and I know that the total of the 2 boxes has to be 20. So I'm going to do 20 divided by 2, and that is going to give me 10. So that means that a 10 goes here and a 10 goes in here. And if you want to double check, 10 plus 10 is 20. Now my rule is that once I know what's in one box, I know what's in all the boxes because they all have to be the same. So every box has to have a 10. And what do I want to know? I want to know how many apples there are. So that would be the apple piece of tape. And that's going to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And so there are 50 apples. Now, that's just one of the questions I can answer with this tape diagram. What other questions can I answer? Well, let's see. So I can say to you, how many fruits are there altogether? Because believe it or not, a tomato is a fruit. And so if I asked you for the total number of fruits, okay, that would be, I would have to count all the boxes, right? The 20 for the tomatoes, the 50 for the apples, and that would be 70. Now, what if I asked you, how many more apples are there than tomatoes? Well, do you see that these orange boxes are the number of apples that there are in addition to that first 20, right? So if there are 20 tomatoes, everything after 20 for the apples is going to be how many more. So how many more apples? There are, you have 10, 20, 30 more apples than tomatoes. And those are all the things that we can answer just from this one tape diagram. And so that makes it extra important to put our answer in either a sentence or a phrase, but to have the label so that everyone knows that we know what question we are answering.